There's a stone sitting in the bed of almost every river on Earth right now. It costs nothing to pick up. Strike it against a piece of steel, and it throws a spark hot enough to ignite tinder in conditions where every modern lighter, every ferro rod, and every waterproof match in your pack has already failed. Wind, rain, altitude, cold, none of it matters. The stone works because physics does not stop working when the weather turns bad. Homo erectus used it 1.7 million years ago, making it the oldest fire-starting technology in the entire archaeological record. Every Viking expedition that crossed the North Atlantic carried it. Every indigenous hunter who traveled the northern wilderness through winter carried it. Every soldier, trapper, and frontiersman before 1850 depended on it for survival, in conditions that would empty a modern lighter in an afternoon. Then the outdoor industry arrived with ferro rods that wear down, lighters that fail in cold and wet, and matches that run out every trip. A $500 million fire-starting industry depends on you buying replacements every season. A stone you pick up free from any riverbed and use indefinitely cannot be packaged into that model. The stone is flint, the most reliable fire-starting material in the history of human survival. Welcome to the Blueprint Secrets. This is where we dig up what the outdoor industry buried. Subscribe now and ring the bell. Every field we open here, they would prefer stayed forgotten forever. Let me take you back to where this story begins. The year is approximately 1.7 million BC. We are in East Africa at sites associated with Homo erectus. Stone toolmakers working with Flint and chert discover that striking certain stones against iron-bearing rocks produces sparks intense enough to ignite dry plant fiber. The evidence of controlled fire use at these sites represents the earliest documented human relationship with fire technology. It begins with a stone. By 10,000 BC, every human culture developing across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia uses flint as its primary fire-starting material. Flint is so critical to survival that trade networks spanning hundreds of kilometers developed specifically to move high-quality flint nodules between communities that lack local sources. Viking seafaring tradition documents flint and steel as standard equipment on every ocean voyage. Archaeological finds from Viking Age sites across Scandinavia and Iceland consistently include flint strikers alongside iron fire steels and personal kit assemblages. Every longship that crossed the North Atlantic carried the means to start fire regardless of weather encountered at sea. Native American and First Nations peoples across the continent developed sophisticated flint fire-starting traditions long before European contact. The Lakota, Blackfoot, and Cree peoples all documented flint and pyrite fire starting in oral traditions and early ethnographic records. Flint fire kits a flint nodule. An iron pyrite striker and prepared tinder fungus were carried as personal survival equipment across thousands of years of northern wilderness travel. Every mountain man, voyageur, and frontier settler in North America carried a flint and steel kit as their primary ignition system through the 18th and early 19th centuries. When the percussion cap replaced the flintlock in the 1840s, flint fire starting began its retreat from mainstream knowledge. Within 2 generations, it had become a historical curiosity rather than a survival skill. Now let me show you exactly why this stone outperforms every modern fire-starting product in extreme conditions. Flint is a microcrystalline form of silica that forms in chalk and limestone deposits. Its critical property is conchoidal fracture. When struck with force, it breaks along curved, shell-like surfaces, producing edges of extraordinary sharpness. Those freshly fractured edges are the mechanism of fire production. When a sharp flint edge strikes high-carbon steel at the correct angle, the steel is the softer material. The flint shaves microscopic iron particles from the steel surface. Those particles heat to incandescence through friction, reaching between 100 and 300 degrees Celsius in a fraction of a second. They oxidize instantly in air, producing the visible spark. That spark is significantly hotter than a modern ferro rod spark, which burns at approximately 650 degrees Celsius. The temperature difference matters enormously in real conditions. A spark at 100 degrees ignites a much wider range of natural tinder than a spark at 650 degrees. Char cloth, dried fungus, fine dry grass, cattail fluff all ignite reliably from a flint spark in conditions where a ferro rod would fail to catch. A standard lighter fails below minus 10 Celsius because butane stops vaporizing. A torch lighter floods in sustained rain. A ferro rod loses efficiency when wet and cold. Flint and steel has no fuel to freeze, no mechanism to flood, no chemical reaction that temperature affects. The physics of hard silica striking high-carbon steel produces identical results at minus 30 Celsius as on a warm summer afternoon. No product on any outdoor gear shelf can make that claim honestly. If you have made it this far, you already know more about fire starting than 99% of people buying ferro rods this camping season. Subscribe and share this with someone who needs to remember what the industry buried. The link is in the description. Stay here, because this next part is where the numbers get uncomfortable. The global outdoor fire starting and survival gear market generates over $500 million annually. By sea, Swedish Fire Steel, Light My Fire, UCO, and Zippo all operate on the same model. Your fire starting tool wears out or runs out of fuel. You buy a replacement. That cycle repeats every season indefinitely. A backpacker who knows how to find and use Flint carries a fire starting system that never wears out, costs nothing to replace, and performs better in the worst weather than every modern alternative. They do not buy the ferro rod. They do not generate any of those $500 million. You cannot patent Flint. It has been in riverbeds since the Cretaceous period. You cannot build a replacement cycle around something any hiker picks up at any stream crossing for free. So the outdoor industry did not suppress Flint knowledge. They built an entire product category around manufactured ignition tools and constructed a consumer education system that treats primitive fire starting as a novelty skill rather than a superior technology. Wilderness survival courses spend 30 minutes on Flint as historical curiosity and 2 hours on proper ferro rod technique. Gear retailers stock walls of lighters and fire steels without ever referencing the free alternative sitting in the riverbed outside the store. The result is a generation of outdoor enthusiasts spending money every season on tools that fail precisely when fire matters most. The knowledge never disappeared from the people who needed reliable results in real conditions. The primitive skills and bushcraft community has maintained flint and steel fire starting as a practiced and documented skill throughout the modern outdoor era. A primitive skills school in the Pacific Northwest published a comparison in 2019 testing flint and steel against ferro rod and disposable lighter across 5 weather conditions, including sustained rain and temperatures below -15°C. Flint and steel produced fire in all 5 conditions. The ferro rod failed in 2. The lighter failed in 3. Military survival training programs that emphasize long-duration field operations include flint and steel as a validated primary skill. The British Army Field Manual on Survival lists flint and steel as a recommended primary ignition method for extended field operations precisely because it requires no consumable fuel and functions in all weather conditions. Historical reenactment communities working with period-correct equipment provide an extensive real-world database of flint performance. Living history practitioners who use flint and steel daily across years of field demonstration consistently report the same finding. Once the skill is learned, flint and steel is faster and more reliable in adverse conditions than any modern tool used alongside it. A long-distance winter hiker in northern Finland documented switching from a ferro rod to flint and steel for a 3-week solo traverse in January 2022. At -25°C, his ferro rod required gloves removed to operate and failed twice when the striker was wet. The flint and steel worked with gloves on and never failed across 21 consecutive nights of fire starting in the worst conditions the Finnish winter produced. Here is exactly what to do on your next trip into any landscape with a river or stream. Almost no purchase required. Identify flint correctly first. Flint and chert are dense, glassy-looking stones that feel heavier than they look and have a smooth, waxy surface. Color ranges from dark gray and black to brown and cream. The key test is fracture when broken. The surface is smooth and curved like the inside of a shell, not rough and granular like sandstone. Ive or gravel beds in limestone and chalk regions are the most reliable source. For a steel striker, carry a piece of high-carbon steel with a 90-degree spine and old file, a carbon steel knife spine, or purpose-made fire steel. Stainless steel does not produce adequate sparks. The steel must be above 0.5% carbon content. To strike fire, hold the flint firmly with a sharp edge projecting past your thumb by about 2 centimeters. Hold prepared tinder directly against the flint edge below the striking point. Strike the steel downward along the flint edge with a sharp, controlled motion at roughly 30 degrees from the flint face. The spark falls directly onto the tinder. 1 to 3 strikes produces a reliable coal in dry conditions. Prepare char cloth before any trip. Cut cotton fabric into small squares. Place in a metal tin with a small hole punched in the lid, and heat over a flame until smoke stops. The carbonized cotton catches a flint spark at any temperature and any humidity. It is weightless, costs nothing, and lasts indefinitely sealed. Total kit cost: found flint at $0, 1 old file from any hardware store for $2, homemade char cloth at $0, total weight under 100 grams, total annual replacement cost, 0. Some knowledge never truly disappears. It waits. It waits in the riverbed stones that Homo erectus struck together 1.7 million years ago in East Africa. It waits in the Viking fire kits recovered from Icelandic farmstead sites and the flint strikers found in the belongings of soldiers who fought at Agincourt. It waits in the oral traditions of Lakota and Cree hunters who traveled the northern wilderness through winters that would defeat every piece of modern fire starting technology sold in any outdoor store today. The stone does not know the outdoor industry stopped teaching people to use it. The silica crystal does not stop fracturing into sharp edges because no product margin is attached to it. The iron particle shaved from high-carbon steel does not stop reaching a now 100 degrees Celsius, because no replacement cycle depends on that temperature. The physics that kept every human ancestor alive, through ice ages and Arctic winters, is the same physics sitting in every gravel riverbed you have ever walked past. Then, a $500 million industry arrived with disposable lighters and ferro rods and built a consumer education system that never once told you the stone in the riverbed throws a hotter spark than anything they sell. Within 2 generations, a fire-starting technology that served every human being who ever lived became a historical curiosity while lighter fuel ran dry in winter storms. The Flint is still in the river. It was always there, at every stream crossing on every trail you have ever hiked. Your great-great-grandfather knew. The mountain man who wintered in the Rockies knew. He Norse sailor who needed fire in the middle of the North Atlantic knew. And Homo erectus, who figured it out before our species existed, knew it first. The field was never truly empty. The knowledge was just waiting to be found again. Today, sitting here, you just found it. If this field opened something for you, subscribe and share it forward. Every share preserves what the industry preferred you never find. The next field opens soon. What is forgotten inside it weighs even heavier than what you just uncovered here.